Hello, today we start a new book, the book of Zechariah, and this is the overview and outline of the book. In 587 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, destroyed Jerusalem, killed thousands, took 745 people into captivity, left some of the poor in the land, and set up Gedaliah as governor. But Gedaliah was murdered, and Jehonan took all the remnant who remained in Judea to Egypt, and there they perished when Nebuchadnezzar came to Egypt. For 50 years, the land of Judah remained desolate. Had God forgotten his people? Then in 537 BC, Cyrus the Mede overthrew Babylon and gave a decree to rebuild the temple of Jerusalem. At this time, the Jews and some servants returned to Judah, and a lot of Jews and a lot of servants under Zerubbabel and Joshua, enough people to fill a small college football stadium. They began to rebuild the temple and they laid the foundation. But those who remember the glory of Jerusalem from before its destruction could only weep at the pitiful sight. But God had not forgotten his people. In 520 BC, the second year of Darius the Great, God raised up two prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, to encourage the people to build the temple. Zechariah was the grandson of Iddo, one of the heads of the priestly lines. Though known for encouraging the Jews to build the temple, Zechariah's message looks far beyond the temple. The book begins with three separate prophecies and three different dates. The first prophecy is approximately 2 months after the Jews again took up the task of building the post-exilic temple in 520 BC. 3 months later, um, 2 months to the day after the foundation of the temple was again laid, Zechariah has a series of 8 visions that form the second prophecy. 2 years later, we have the third prophecy contained in chapters 7 and 8. The book then closes with two prophetic utterance of uncertain dates, chapters 9 through 11 and chapters 12 through 14. The first prophecy, the call to return, is chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. Second prophecy, the 8 visions and the rule of the priest, chapter 1, verse 7 through chapter 6, verse 15. The third prophecy, the question on fasting, is chapter 7 through 8. The first burden, enemies without will die, shepherds within are warned, chapters 9 through 11. And the second burden, Messiah's return, 12 through 14. There is a dispute about whether chapters 9 through 14 were written by a different author. Then chapters 1 through 8, Matthew seems to attribute Zechariah 11, 12 through 13 to Jeremiah the prophet, if you look at Matthew 27:9. But some scholars see this as proof that this portion of Zechariah is really a compilation of earlier prophecies. Other than these prophecies, it's post-dating the time of Zechariah, especially given the reference. My take is that neither issue provides a convincing reason to see two authors. There are many possibility explanations for Matthew's reference, and the reference to Greece should be no surprise given the nature of prophecy and the rise of Greece at this time. Um, the covenant name of God, Yahweh, appears 133 times in the 211 verses of the book, but is the name Yahweh of hosts occurring 53 times that hits us most. The word host is the Hebrew's word Sabbath, meaning literally the armies. Israel at this time had no armies. The Persian armies ruled the world. God steps in as commander of another army. The name Yahweh of hosts was applied to God first in 1 Samuel 1 and 3. Though the concept has its roots in Joshua 5:14 through 15, it explodes its favorite name of God for Isaiah and Amos, and then 150 years later with Jeremiah. It is not used in Ezekiel or Daniel and seldom used by the other earlier prophets except Amos. But Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi latch on to this name for God, with Zechariah having more mentions of this name than any book outside of Isaiah and Jeremiah. The book was meant both to encourage and to provide God's response to the building of the second temple. God promises that the temple they began this time will be completed, but he promises far more. He promises a future temple to be built by a future king who will rule the world, and the frequent glimpses of this future king tantalizes us throughout the book. Amen.